I have a bit of a loaded topic today, and it's going to compound into multiple parts, but I'm just going to get into it. Though I'm probably going to have to follow this one up with another one expanding upon a topic which I will probably not get into since it's a bit too long and worthy of an entire thing itself. But, anyways, this past week or so, I've been re listening to the DigiBros Decompression Chamber, a podcast series I'm quite fond of. Um, It was particularly November 7th and November 15th right here, the space between those two episodes, that there was a sort of a topic that carried over between the two, and that was the one where Digi was talking about comics and getting into comics because of Jesse's slash Endless Jess's panel cast. And there was always something about this segment that rubbed me the wrong way. Be it just because I'm an angry piece of shit, but generally because like re-listening to a lot of these old PCP stuff, which I've been doing lately, as well as just specifically this decompression chamber as well. Digi really likes to jerk Jesse off, and maybe it's just something that I haven't been aware of, just because like I don't have enough experience with Endless Jesse's content. But like I don't seem to find the brilliance in it that Digi seems to have a reverence for. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Jesse's videos are fantastic. He's definitely a good writer, but the way Digi used to, at least at the very least used to put him up on a pedestal was almost like unreal. But that's kind of besides the point. The thing that always sort of the thing that actually rubbed me the wrong way was Digi's general attitude towards anime. And the fact is that Digi fundamentally misunderstood the idea of otaku. And that's the topic for today. Almost, almost the entire story. I'm going to get into what I mean by that. So in this podcast, Digi was talking about how fun it was to get into comics, and reading comics for the first time. And that's something that I've sort of had a similar experience with. Maybe around the same time that this was happening, and this was before I knew who Digi was, specifically, because there was a person I knew in high school, who I'm going to call Kitsune-san, who used to be a really big comic guy. He still is actually a big comic guy, but he was the one who sort of guided me through the early years of getting into anime. Um, and The first manga I read was because of him. I read JoJo backwards because of him. Um, I got into like Fate and stuff well before like Fate Zero was a thing because of him. So this guy was pretty ahead of the curve, but he was also a comic guy. He was the kind of guy who liked to consume a lot of media, but wasn't really like necessarily attached to a specific one. Um, but he just kind of liked to consume a little bit of everything, I guess. But he was also a big comic guy, and he tried to get me into comics. When I was younger, I read a little bit of comics. I read a bit of the Amazing Spider-Man, because it was at the library or something, but nothing really. Like most kids have read a comic book, but I never got into comics the way, granted, I never got into anything quite like the way I got into to anime. But Digi was talking about getting into comics as being fun, and explaining how, at least in contrast, or I guess in comparison, that the anime was becoming stale to him, uh, and comics was the new fun thing. But the thing that really sort of bothered me was how Digi explained how he was beginning to see or reach the end of anime, I guess. And this is where the whole point about fundamentally misunderstanding the point of otaku comes into play. So I'm going to sort of explain it. The thing is that with anime, generally speaking, you're going to spend a lot of time watching 6 and 7 out of 10 shows, maybe even less. The vast majority of the time, you're going to be watching something between a 4 and a 7. It's very unlikely that you're going to be watching anything that's going to be blowing you away. And if you continuously watch things that blow you away, it's not really going to make them special. It's going to diminish the value of the tens. When I look at my anime list, I have maybe a handful of tens that were given, and all of them were given tens for very special reasoning. Like, they quite literally changed my life, and they are shows that I think about on a daily basis. Um, and I think for reference, I don't even know if I have all of Oregairu as a 10. There are some seasons that I don't find as strong as the other ones. But shows that belong on there are like Haruhi, Lucky Star. I don't think the entire Haruhi. I think I only have the movie um, as a 10. But like Lucky Star is a 10, NHK is a 10. Not all of my favorites are even 10s. 10s are shows that are very special to me. Same thing with 9s. 9s are I give them away a little bit more liberally, but generally speaking, there is still a bit of a like a bit of gatekeeping involved when it comes to giving a thing a high score like that. But like I give shows like 8s all the fucking time because I like anime. If a show is fun, then I'm going to give it to that because it's an enjoyable show. But the reason I brought up scores is because it's an easy metric to judge a show by, or at the very least, like numerically quantify. I think I just said the same thing, but there's a way to quantify the quality of a show easily in as few words as possible without going into explaining. It's very reductionary, but there are no really easier, better ways to say things in fewer words. Because Digi explained in this episode of the podcast, the November 15th episode, that during that year of 2016, in terms of seasonal anime at the very least, maybe in generally speaking, he said he hadn't seen anything that was great. And perhaps this is just a matter of perspective, but it's also a matter of taste as well, that during a given year, even if a show is really good, you're going to hesitate to call it a modern classic because it literally just aired, so you're going to have to let it time to sit. For example, a show like Madoka Magica, I'm sure while it was airing, people thought it was great, but they were like, we don't know if this is a classic yet. But a decade later, people were able to look at it and say, okay, this is actually a classic now that it's been given time to sort of bake within the anime otaku or anime watching scene in general, otaku culture, all that good stuff. But you're not really going to be watching excellent anime all the time. That's the problem I have with the sentiment that I guess I should explain it like approaching it from an opposite perspective that let's say instead of thinking this is basically what I mean, that the majority like the good stuff within anime is not necessarily representative of what anime actually is, and that could be said for all mediums. Mediums are defined by the 4 to 7 out of 10 shows. They're not defined really by the 10s. We might want to define anime as Neon Genesis Evangelion, Studio Ghibli movies, but that's not really what's being released all the time. If you tell someone that's what it is, you're giving them a false representation of what the medium actually is, because the majority of the things within it are not that. Majority of them are anime-y anime. That it's sort of like almost used as a buzzword at points. That a show is too anime or has a lot of anime-isms. Then what is anime and what isn't anime? Right? Same thing could be said about books and films and music and everything. Like, a lot of that stuff is not going to be excellent. Not every album is a 10 out of 10 album. Not every album is Loveless, unfortunately. Not every album is Dark Side of the Moon. We're going to have a lot of shit that you have to wade through, a lot of songs that are skips. Same thing with movies, a lot of movies that are not even worth watching. And I think really what defines someone from being a fan of something and to not being a fan of something is if they can find enjoyment, derive some sort of enjoyment from like a 5 out of 10 within that medium. Or they're able to sit down and watch something, like right now I'm watching Doc Hoppo 3 and having a fantastic time. If you're able to watch a middle of the road type of thing within the medium that you call home, then I think that's really what makes you a fan or what makes you an otaku. I wrote about this in a blog. I can't remember exactly which one because at this point I think there's been 3 blogs that are exactly the same, or at least have touched on similar things. The one that's about to drop is about Gift Eternal Rainbow, which is similar, talking about categorical attraction towards Bishoujo game adaptations, which I have. the other one, I think it was the one about Yosuga no Sora, which talked about how, like, I guess, like, generally speaking, like, the people who like anime are gonna like the bad anime, I guess. And what really made me realize this was the other day. Um, I went downstairs to take a piss, and my dad was watching a shitty movie. Because we have Amazon Prime Video, because it comes with Amazon Prime or whatever. And sometimes he just watches random bullshit on there. And the thing is that on Amazon Prime, it's not, even though it is a streaming platform, they don't really do a good job, or I don't think they even do much of an effort into um, sort of curating their collection like other streaming services like HBO Max that we also have does. Whereas on those platforms, they tend to limit the amount of things that they have on there, but at the same time, like elevate the quality. So most of the things on there are actually pretty good. Whereas on Amazon Prime, you're gonna have a lot of bargain bin type things, like if you would walk into Walmart and go to the back of the store, you know that one big like container thing where they throw DVDs for like $5 or less, like those type of movies. Like you look at it and you're like, I vaguely remember this shit coming out, but did it even exist? Why is it on DVD? Amazon Prime, it just has a lot of those things. And he was just watching some random generic fucking movie. And I came out of the bathroom and he was telling me about something unrelated, and he was telling me about the movie. And he was saying how it was kind of bad. The story sucked. Um, he didn't really understand what was happening because it wasn't told too well, and like the quality wasn't too good. And he's a bit of a casual movie watcher. However, he's someone who's watched a lot of movies. My dad has, my dad, I think, if anything, he is a movie fan or movie enjoyer, not in the same way that someone might be a snob of it, or like a cinema guy. He's not the kind of guy who calls movies films. He just likes movies a lot, and he's been watching movies for many years. He knows more movies than I probably will ever know. But he's still able to sit down and watch this thing simply because there's something about the fact that the pictures are moving that fascinates him. And that's something that Digi talked about this in the decompression chamber. That for some people, like the very fact that this thing is happening or the thing that exists is enough for them to be into it. And I think that's really what defines someone as the quote unquote otaku, like a movie otaku. I also realized my dad was a bit more autistic than I might have given him credit for. He might be as autistic as me when it comes to these things, because I realized that right now my dad is watching a shitty movie. He's watching probably a 3 or 4 out of 10 movie, but he's still watching it because that's how he wants to fill his time, and he's someone who enjoys watching movies. And I realized at the same time, what the fuck was I watching? I was watching like, shit, what was I watching earlier this week? Chrono Crusade, which is like a really shitty 2000s fantasy, magic, sci-fi, steampunk bullshit anime. Um, like it was terrible. I did not like it, but I was still watching it, and I sat down and watched like 10 episodes in one day, and completely forgot what happened immediately afterwards. But the point is that I was watching a bad anime, and my dad was watching a bad movie. Both of us knowing full well that we were watching something bad, but still going through the process of finishing it because there was something intriguing about the fact that it even existed in the first place. And because we are, I guess, categorically attracted to these things, we are otaku to our respective mediums in which we inhabit. And this is why I was rubbed the wrong way about Digi making the remark that there was an end to anime, because for me there is no end to anime. The way I approach anime is simply as more like a lifestyle, and the fact that like I've never really thought about there being an end to anime, I guess. Like within certain things, for example, like movies, anime movies specifically, um, that I feel that there is an end to them simply because anime movies are very expensive to produce, so not too many have been made. So you can easily watch every single anime movie that's ever been made. Um, and I've watched maybe like 60 to 70% of them, maybe a little bit less. But I've watched over half, which are the good ones, and they're even within those. Like there's a lot of them that are bad because I simply don't find movies that interesting. because I tend to find movies to be like the best movies are ones that fully take advantage of the medium, um, and they tend to be more technical than they are narrative focused, because movies can't do narratives. Narratives should be left to long form television shows, like regular live action television shows, anime, books, comics, those sorts of things. Um, and they should focus more on the fact that they are a movie with moving pictures and can do cool things with framing and music and dramatic shots that a lot of other things cannot. Like animation can pull off things that movies cannot, and vice versa. And I think they should lean into those things. But I guess the point is that like even within anime movies, for example, that I feel like I've watched them all, it's not the end to anime. But I think Digi was talking about the end to anime in terms of like watching all the good things, like watching all the 9 or 10s out of tens, watching the things that were worth watching within the medium that still kept it exciting, and then moving on. Because what Digi likes to do is consume media, or at least liked to do during the. I'm gonna probably the tenses are gonna be weird because I'm more so responding to that specific video that was released what, like 6 years ago or something? Holy shit. Probably even more now. But anyways, um shit, where was I? Like the fact that Digi sort of concluded that there must be a quote unquote end to anime at some point, like metaphorically speaking, hypothetically speaking, that there was an end to anime, was problematic to me because I don't see an end to my anime watching. I just keep watching stuff because it's fun. And at this point, I've already watched more anime than Digi had, at least in terms of shows completed, not necessarily days watched. And I know there's a lot of stuff that I haven't completed yet, but I'm still going through it. I'm not running through it like a checkbox. And I think maybe at the specific time Digi was making this video, which was right before making Akiyuki Shimbo in the 90s, so just watching a lot of shit to have information and footage for that specific video, like running through it like a checklist, doesn't make anime fun. I've talked about this before in terms of like how do I maximize my enjoyment of time with anime, and it's just sort of like mix things up. Like more broadly speaking, just mix things up. But I don't think that for me, at the very least, I don't see an end to this, and I think that's what defines someone as an otaku and someone who isn't. Someone who is able to continue enjoying the media within that specific medium, regardless of how things change and regardless of how like specific things are. And I kind of want to talk about that because right here up on my wall, I have a poster of K-On! And a poster of Stardust Crusader, JoJo Stardust Crusaders Part 3. And like I didn't do this intentionally, but they're both there. And I was going to mention this earlier, and I'm glad I remembered it right now. That in terms of like 9 or 10s out of tens, I don't think 9 or 10s out of tens are that interesting. Which is going to sound weird, but like a quote unquote as quote unquote objective as you can get. For example, like let's use the example Spirited Away, which is one of the most popular Ghibli movies, and it's also one of my least favorite Ghibli movies personally. I'm going to use it as an example because everybody and their mom knows it. But the thing is with those like hypothetical 9 or 10s out of tens, and another show being like Evangelion or something like that, shows that are almost universally appreciated because they do things good. But the reason I don't find those that interesting is because I think anyone can find those shows interesting. Perfect example. I showed my mom the movie Wolf Children. It's like Okami Toyuki Wolf Children or something, the Mamoru Hosoda film. And it's now one of her favorite movies. She legitimately cried during watching it, and she kept talking about it to me like the entire week after we finished watching it because it had such a profound impact on her life. And it's not that watching that movie makes my mom an anime fan. She's an anime appreciator because I think anyone can appreciate, or at the very least enjoy, or maybe I have that backwards. Everyone can enjoy, or at the very least appreciate, an 8 or 9 out of 10 within any medium whatsoever. I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't find some sort of appreciation for like one of the greatest albums of all time. Like even if I'm not like a while back, I used to be someone who wasn't really too into hip hop, but my brother showed me some like some classic boom bap hip hop, and then I listened to Mad Villainy, which was one of like the first true hip hop albums I put on to listen to by MF Doom, obviously. And I was able to find some sort of enjoyment with those albums prior to getting more into hip hop, simply because, from a musical perspective, and being someone who understands music at least a little bit or has an appreciation of it, I can see what sort of artistry is going in here. One of the first hip hop songs my brother showed me was New York State of Mind, and it was it was kind of what I thought hip hop was, or at the very least should have been in terms of like a lyrical perspective, and it was like, damn, these guys are actually having something to say, and I started to appreciate it more. So even being someone who's not into that specific genre of music, like take it as like a microcosm of this, like in general terms speaking, that I'm sure if I show my parents or just anyone, like I pull a guy off the street, strap him to a chair, and make him watch Requiem for a Dream, I think he would find some sort of enjoyment, or at the very least appreciation for what the movie is doing, because a movie like that has at the very least the trippiness factor going for it, or the whole like mind blender thing that I think is an interesting like sort of um like I guess like low bar for entry sort of, but very difficult to achieve, because I think with things like that, for example, Evangelion, I think even if you don't understand Evangelion the first time, or you don't understand it at all, same thing with Lane. There's a lot of people who don't really understand Lane, and arguably nobody does. But with things like that, there's not really a gradient for like someone who enjoys it for it simply at face value, and someone who enjoys it from a significantly deeper level, like they've read and written reports about it. I think like those two people can both appreciate something, and that's really what makes a show special. So that's why Evangelion is so important, I guess, because it's a show that like is enjoyed by people who like think it's simply impressive that these things are happening on screen. For example, like my brother watched it and he missed a lot of this shit. Um, and like I'm not gonna call him stupid or anything, because I think a lot of people didn't really get Ava the first time, but they thought it was cool. They thought it was interesting. These ideas, they understand the human emotion part of it, like Shinji's emotional journey through the show and what ultimately happened, sort of made a lot of the quote unquote weird factors seem more artistic, simply the way it was framed, and that's the way something like Requiem for a Dream, for example, can be uh, perceived from someone who doesn't understand film but sees it and thinks it's cool because there are cool montages happening and the way things look are cool and interesting and kind of trippy, done well enough that someone without knowing the inner workings of film can appreciate. That's why directors like Quentin Tarantino are so universally, I want to say universally loved, but I think there's some people who don't like him and are vocal about it. But like, for example, a movie like um, Pulp Fiction is like it's not even a cult classic anymore. Everybody fucking loves that movie because film snobs love it because they like how it's achronological and things interconnect, and how there's intertextuality with in terms of like callbacks to previous movies and like music and everything. Like music, people like it because of the music. Um, like regular dudes like it because John Travolta has a gun and Samuel L. Jackson says the N word a lot. Like there's such an interesting I sort of like flat Earth policy when it comes to these things. I think there was a thing like this in economics I learned about, in terms of um, like leveling the playing field when with internet being introduced in the world, sort of like leveled the playing field, or sort of they called it like flat something. I don't fucking remember because I didn't pay attention in that class. But it was the idea that the internet allows people to be connected, so it's no longer about like um, you have to only do business within your town. So like you have to source parts from like the next town over only. You can source parts from fucking Taiwan for all I care. And that's kind of what um, this is coming from. Like you could just be like just a dude on the street, like some dumbass guy, um, with like a 2-digit IQ, but you see John Travolta and thinks he's cool. Or you can be like a 300 IQ big brain Reddit lad over here talking about how brilliant Pulp Fiction is, or maybe how like whatever you think, and that's why it's able to be somewhat of a timeless classic. But that's a good example to sort of tie this back, that you don't have to be a film guy to understand what makes Pulp Fiction good. You can enjoy it for different reasons, because it's a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, whatever you want to give it. And that's why I don't think these 9 out of 10s or 10 out of 10s are really that interesting. At least from like the perspective of the medium itself, because I think that anyone can enjoy those things. You don't have to be a film snob to enjoy them. For example, like I think someone who is really into horror movies is not gonna like. Maybe they're gonna have John Carpenter's The Thing on their top five or 3x3s or whatever, but they're probably not spending a lot of time thinking about that particular movie, in the sense that like it's something that they return to it, but that's not what they're spending their time on all the time. They're watching like shitty B movies from the 70s, exploitation films, random ass foreign horror movies with no subtitles, and shitty VHS rips that probably shouldn't even exist in the first place. That's what they're watching. The people who are into something are not going to be spending a lot of time watching the shit, but unfortunately, the cliche is going to hold true here, that that's what makes the greats shine brighter, is after watching the less interesting things. The less interesting things might not be that interesting in the moment, but they help build perspective. I think that's what was so fascinating to me about the show Saikano, that it was a show that wasn't really that good, and it built off, or actually that's incorrect. Saikano is actually pretty good, but it built off a lot of like if you'd use the shows that came before as sort of like a foothold to rise just barely above, but to use it to its advantage and provide some sort of like tongue-in-cheek commentary the entire way through. And I think that was fascinating. Other shows tend to do that too. And that's why they're important, and that's why they're cool, because they continue to reiterate upon themselves. And I think that's what allows you to gain a deeper appreciation for something, when it shows reiterate upon themselves, or something like literally all the examples I've used. Have done something to that sense. They are not the first to do it, but they are ones to do it right. Question mark or whatever. Evangelion built off things. These things have been done before. I remember in Zeta Gundam, the something similar happened. It's not that Anno was the first one to invent these things. It's just that he was someone who appreciated mecha shows and the art of anime, and was able to build off a lot of these things with his entire understanding of the world and the medium itself and art, and like through his own lens, distill it down into one 26 episode and one movie television show, at least disregarding the rebuilds for now. Pulp Fiction was built off the back of Quentin Tarantino watching a lot of fucking movies and just being a film otaku. This guy was just watching everything, dude. That's why he is so good at, I guess, making movies, is because he's someone who's watched all the movies. I remember watching this one interview of Tarantino doing an intro for Wong Kar-wai's Chungking Express in like the 2000s, and I was watching that interview because he was doing like an introduction for it before like a film festival, and the first thing I thought of was like, of course Tarantino has seen Chungking Express, of course he knows who Wong Kar-wai is. These are one of the most beautiful looking movies and impeccably directed and shot things ever done. I mean, the story is garbage. I think it's boring, but it's one of the prettiest things to look at. Um, but that's kind of where it comes from. And then something like what was the other thing I mentioned? Requiem for a Dream. Requiem for a Dream was heavily inspired by Satoshi Kon. Because later, what was his name? Darren Aronofsky or something like that. He went to make Black Swan, which is basically just a worse version of Perfect Blue, but it's also kind of interesting to see it in live action. It does have some merits, but it's overall like a sort of like a lesser version. But that's kind of the point. That maybe that's not the point, but the point I'm trying to make here is that 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s are not that interesting because they're not indicative of the genre itself. And Digi running through anime and sort of saying that there is an end to it is sort of missing the point. Because I think otaku will continue to consume every anime possible, and that's kind of what I find myself doing. That I'll just watch everything. Anything from K-On! To JoJo. Those are both shows. I think, I haven't given JoJo an 8 since I'm not super fond of it, but I've enjoyed them similarly. And then I have a JoJo poster next to a poster of Darling in the Franxx, which is next to a poster of Eromanga Sensei, which is next to a poster of Canon 2006, which is above a poster to Precure 5, next to a poster of Yukino Shita Yukino, above a poster of New Game, next to a poster of from Railgun. And of those shows, which are the shows up there that I enjoy better than the other ones? Do I like JoJo more than Canon? Or do I like Eromanga Sensei more than JoJo? Can you tell based off the posters I got here? But the fact that I have the posters is just indicative that these are shows that are worth plastering up on my wall because for some reason there is some sort of importance, or at the very least, I've gone out of my way to acquire a poster version of this show so I can look at it without looking at the screen and still remember why that thing exists in my heart. I'm gonna watch all the anime. That was something that, like, I think I quickly realized when I started becoming a hardcore otaku in 2017 that I think it was almost assuredly after watching Lucky Star for the first time, and I realized that I had seen 200 anime. Lucky Star was my 200th anime, but then I also realized at the same time that like this anime stuff is pretty sick. Now that I have a lot of time to do this, can't I just watch them all now? And I had this huge backlog of shows, and I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna watch them all. It was never a question of, crap, I should watch this one next because it's rated highly on Mal. No, I'm gonna watch fucking Da Capo 3, the anime version of a adaptation, probably a poor adaptation of the Bishoujo game, Da Capo 3, and I've seen all the other seasons of Da Capo for the simple fact that I like Bishoujo game adaptations. I can't tell you why. I'm going to attempt to explain it in the next blog/video, spoiler alert for main channel, 36-minute video dropping soon, hopefully by the end of the month. But the point is that, shit, where was I? Watching Da Capo 3, I guess. I don't know. Dude, I don't fucking remember where the hell I was. I'm gonna watch all the anime. That's the point. I'm gonna watch Da Capo 3. The next I'm probably gonna watch Tsukiyomi Moon Phase because I saw a girl with cat ears and I'm like, dude, Neko Mimi, that's pretty epic and cool and pog and everything. Why the hell do I have a Dakimakura of Tokisaki Kurumi? Because Data Live is awesome. I like Data Live. I have a Megumi Kato shirt because I like Saikano now. I realized that after rewatching the show and thinking about it for like 5 years, and like, holy shit, Saikano is actually brilliant, dudes. I just like anime, and I think maybe I'm a little bit more autistic, or maybe I have a lower class. My brow is so far down my face that I look like a Neanderthal, maybe. I don't know. I have no taste. I have no metric for quality, but I like all anime unconditionally. and at the same time I unconditionally love Bishoujo game adaptations of anime. It's just a medium that I find infinitely fascinating, and I have no desire to go outside of it, nor do I have like any reason to. And Digi's sort of uh, desire to explore out of, and like listening to Digi explain how like I want to do the same thing that I did when I got into comics, that everything's cool and all that shit. Like, to me that doesn't seem that appealing. Like, I've kind of tried to do that. I've tried to break into different mediums. Like, I've tried to be a gamer, I've tried to be a movie watcher, and none of those have really stuck for me. Like, I kind of casually game and casually play video games and stuff. And like right now, I'm playing a game that I think is actually fantastic. It's Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, and I'm having a fantastic time playing it. It's just I haven't touched it in 2 weeks because I'm not. It's not what I'm thinking about right now. I didn't watch a movie last weekend because I looked at the movie selection I had and I'm like, dude, this is fucking retarded. Let me just watch another episode of Chrono Crusade, a show that I ended up giving like a 3 out of 10 to. But I found that way more fascinating to watch than whatever movie I could have pulled out of my ass, because I'm like, horror movies all suck. I've seen like the two good ones. And like, it's just, I don't know, dude. It's just kind of where I am, because like I was rubbed. I felt wrong. It rubbed me the wrong way when I heard Digi say that about anime, and it made me feel that like, maybe this is different. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I'm the one who's too far gone, but I think I'm the one who understands otaku a little bit more. Like, I'm not as well read. I don't spend as much time writing about anime. I don't have as much of a background knowledge and historical perspective as someone like Digi might have had. But at the same time, I've seen more shows than him. Then doesn't on paper that mean I have more perspective than him if we're using those metrics? I hate to use numbers like that. But at some point, I'm going to objectively reach a point where I have more perspective, spending more time, more hours of my life, and more years of my life watching anime consistently, in terms of the density of shows watched per day, per hour, or whatever, per year. And more anime completed, that eventually it's going to reach a point where I've watched like 4,000 shows, and I'm going to be up there with the big boys on Mal. I'm not going to be the one who's seen the most. I'm never going to be the one who's seen the most. But that's not really what it's about. It's not about the numbers or anything for me. It's not about crossing things off a list. Like, I did a stream last year where I just crossed off a bunch of things off a list, which might sound contradictory. But I like to cross things off a list because I get to them eventually. The reason those lists have been around on my computer since like 2016, 2017, 2018-ish, and they're still remaining complete, is because I haven't gotten around to them. I haven't watched all the 10 out of 10 shows. I haven't watched Legend of the Galactic Heroes because it's a show that I'm sitting on, because I understand that there will be a day for it eventually, but that day is not here yet. But I understand with confidence that I'm going to be here for a while, so I have no rush to try to finish everything on those lists. I'm not trying to cross everything off the bingo list like Digi was with comics. I don't want to have any perspective on anything. I don't want to understand art. I just want to understand the show that I'm watching at this very moment. I just want to understand what the heck Sakura is thinking in Da Capo 3. That's all I care about right now. Having a perspective on anything, like if it means like having to go through it, just, you're gonna have a surface level understanding of everything. And I don't like that. I don't like running through checkboxes, because that makes me quickly fade out of any hobby. The hobbies I used to be into before anime, I was into origami, I was into yo-yoing, I was into reading books. And whenever I try to break further into those hobbies by following some sort of guide, it never worked. And like right now, I find it interesting to find a guide for something, to quote-unquote get into it just for fun, like mechanical keyboards or headphones or like computer shit. Over here in this box, I have a custom Game Boy Advance that I made with the LCD screen. custom Game Boy Advance with LCD screen, shell swapped and everything. USB-C battery. Rechargeable battery, I should say. I like to get into things. Getting into things is cool, but when it reaches a certain point of becoming a fan of it, nothing really has captured me the same way as anime. Call it sink cost or whatever, simply because I can justify it to myself easily that I could watch Da Capo 3 and it would be more worthwhile than finishing Sonic Advance or Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, simply because I've watched more anime, so watching it will somehow make it a more valuable experience by adding a small number to the end of my completed shows on Mal. Perhaps that's why subconsciously I'm thinking that, but at the same time, I'm enjoying my experience watching a show that I probably not really remember too much of, though that's incorrect, because Da Capo 3 is low-key kind of cool. But, I don't know, just like talking about crossing things off a list is not interesting. Because if you're crossing those off, you're going through the 9s and 10s, you're getting a surface level understanding of it. And I think anyone can enjoy those things. The reason why those items are picked from a list is because they might be representative of comics, but they might be, unfortunately, some of the only good ones. And if you look at a giant list of recommendations for anime, you're only going to see a lot of repeating shows. And the reason you're going to see a lot of repeating shows is because those are the ones that people generally find interesting. Sometimes I just find anime that no one has ever fucking talked about before. Like, I've literally never heard of this show called Chance Pop Session, but I have a Blu-ray DVD box set by ADV here that I found on Right Stuff's page. I saw this show and I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this show? I've never heard about it before. I had to buy it and now I have to watch it. Maybe I'll watch it next. And the reason no one has talked about this show is because it's not on any lists. It's not on any of the charts I have. It's not on, I don't even know, it might be sitting somewhere in the limbo of 6 out of 10 anime on my anime list, which anime that are on the 7s or lower. I basically, if they're under 6.5%, they don't exist, and you're never going to find them. There are so many shows like that are probably pretty good that you just never hear about. That's why I wanted to talk about the show Gift Eternal Rainbow. And a lot of the reason why I talked about random obscure fucking shows, or at the very least shows that people don't tend to appreciate, don't talk about too much, are because I think that they're worthwhile talking about. And I treat everything the same. There are some shows that I feel that are worthy of a little bit more sort of respect, simply because of their legacy, but at the same time, like, I'll easily say that Lucky Star is better than most anime I've seen. Like, I freaking have Amagami SS on my top 10. I have Ore fucking Imo, Ore no Imoto ga konani, shit. Ore no Imoto ga konani kawaii wake ga nai is on my fucking top 10. Because I love Ore Imo, and I will say, I'll scream it, I'll open a window and I'll scream it. I'll be like, dude, I fucking love little sisters, bring on the flat chests, because I am in love with anime. It might be the only thing in life that I actually care about. In this world that I care about, I think I care about anime a little bit more than I care about myself. It's a bit of an addiction. But we all have our vices, don't we? I don't know. I guess the point of this entire ramble is to talk about kind of missing the point. That if you want to see the end of something, I don't think you really care about it too much. Or at the very least, like, I don't think you understand really what's happening here. You don't understand the sort of aimless and directionless autism, the autism that knows no bounds of people who are inherently autistic about things, like someone who is autistic, like, clinically, I guess, who is into trains or something, like the traditional person who's autistic about something is into trains or whatever, maybe military, maybe history, stuff like that. They get invested in those things because they are infinitely deep, quote unquote, I guess. There are things that they could spend a lot of time thinking about, and they just really like that, and that's all they care about. And that's kind of how I feel about something like anime. And I think if you sort of start to leave that perspective, like you want to see something else, like you feel that there are greater horizons elsewhere, I don't know if you're really a fan of that thing to begin with. And that's what I said about I think in the blog about Yosuga no Sora, that's really what defines someone as a fan of something. Like if you can appreciate or at the very least enjoy the 4 out of 10 to the 7 out of 10 anime, then that's really what makes you an anime fan. Unless otherwise you're a fake taku. I saw this a lot with the anime club. I don't want to keep rambling on too much because this is actually comically long. But I saw this a lot in the anime club in my university, that there was a lot of these Toonami tards who grew up watching, at least that's what I call them, Toonami tards who grew up watching like Dragon Ball Z and Cowboy Bebop and shit, like the classic Toonami, Inuyasha type of stuff. Like they don't really know what's happening with anime these days, and like if you show something like Haruhi, they won't like it. This is a very specific demographic of people a certain age, and these are the type of people who watch all the MCU movies and collect the Funko Pops and everything. They're kind of into pop culture in general. They are the Redditor soy face pointing at thing behind them. They are an early adopter of the Nintendo Switch, but they are not real anime fans, I can tell you that. This is Pars coming at you live, gatekeeping on camera right now. I think gatekeeping is a good thing because of this, but that's a topic for a different day. The point is that these people are not anime fans. They're not fans of anything. Instead, they are people who enjoy watching quote-unquote good things. Things that everybody fucking likes. Like, they like these anime, or they like Cowboy Bebop because everybody likes Cowboy Bebop. I could show my grandpa Cowboy Bebop, and he'd probably think it was cool. Like, if you show it to my dad, and I'll be like, dude, look, this guy was, the way this guy fights is kind of like Bruce Lee, and listen to the music. Like, there's no one who's gonna tell you, like, that you're wrong about that, and they're probably gonna find some sort of enjoyment. Like, damn, this is pretty cool for an anime. But no one is gonna tell you the same thing about Da Capo, or Gift Eternal Rainbow, or Tsukiyomi Moon Phase, or Amagami-sama, or a New Game. Like, they're probably gonna look at it. Like, if I try to show my mom New Game, she's gonna say it looks cute, but she's not gonna understand it. But when I showed her Wolf Children, I did so intentionally because I knew she would like it. You can get anyone into anything with the correct things, but you can't. But what keeps them involved is if they can watch the 7 out of 10 show, or if they can watch the 5 without dropping it. If you are dropping stuff all the time, maybe you value your time a lot, but maybe you don't really enjoy watching the things to begin with. You only want to watch the 10s, and if you only want to watch the 10s, then what's stopping you from watching a 10 out of 10 movie right now? And if you say nothing, then I don't think you're a real anime otaku, right? I am gatekeeping right now. And because I think a lot of people, or at the very least, like with like a lot of new taku and casuals and shit, dude, like I'm pretty strict on those people. And because I was strict on myself the same way, and I feel that a lot of those things should be carried over. That if you really don't care about a thing, like if you've only seen like 3 or 4 shows, if you've only seen Dragon Ball, Inuyasha, and Cowboy Bebop, you can't really call yourself an anime fan, much less an otaku. Because I think those people, like, you could show someone like 4 Ghibli movies and they'll be like, I'm a fan of anime now. But then you show them, I don't know, Higurashi, and they'll think it's weird, anime bullshit. Much less show them Eromanga Sensei. I mean, I've seen them all. I like Eromanga Sensei. At least I think I kind of do. I have to rewatch it now. I know Hitori Goto is a banger opening. I can tell you that. I like Little Sisters more than, almost as much as anime. I like Little Sisters more than food, I can tell you that. But like, a lot of people won't like those anime isms. And if you don't like the anime isms, then you're not really an anime fan. But I think that's kind of the point. The point I was trying to make this entire time has probably been said like 4 or 5 times. during the course of this, and you probably got the idea fairly quickly. It's just that I was rewatching this episode of the Decompression Chamber, and after I finished I don't think I even finished rewatching the episode, um, November 15th episode of the Decompression Chamber, because it was starting to rub me the wrong way, and I never really, excuse me, liked that one too much. But it sort of like made me realize that like a lot of what Digi was talking about were things that I've told myself before in the past. Like, dude, maybe you're watching too much anime. Maybe you should spend your time reading books or something. And there was times when I went to the bookstore and I picked up a couple books or something. There was a time when I read Brave New World. And what did I think about reading Brave New World? I don't know. I read it at work one day, and I was getting paid to do it, so I didn't mind. But it wouldn't be anything that I would do on my own, because I think books are stupid. I hate reading, and it's worthless. There's nothing in books that you can't find any value in that could not be found on Wikipedia. Unironically, just kidding. But like sometimes I think that sometimes like this past week I was like, dude, does music even matter? Like, I fucking hate music. And so that's why I was re-listening to the Decompression Chamber, because I had no interest in music for an entire week. Like, sometimes that happens while my brain resets from something. But that's really never happened with me with anime. It's happened with me with video games. It's happened with me with like everything from like working out. Like, sometimes I get really fucking into working out. Sometimes I get really into music. Sometimes I get really into movies. Like, I got really into movies when I was prior to making the Eternal Sunshine of the Javeless Mind, hence why there are a lot of callbacks to cool directing tricks that I saw that I was like, yeah, dude, I could fucking do that. In my room, much less. But like, a lot of those things are just fleeting passions. Same thing with like mechanical keyboards and modded Game Boys and headphones and shit. Like, those are kind of like passing things. They're things to get into. They're the PNG charts saved on my computer's hard drive that I look through and I cross things off. But the things that I venture off into my own and to find, I went to go find Chance Pop Session, by example, by complete happenstance. And I bought it because I think it'd be cool to watch simply because this anime exists and I have not heard of it. It's just an anime. And I was thinking about this sometimes, this is probably going to be the last thing, that like, how cool would it be to be watching a anime show on TV? Like let's say I lived in Japan and I wasn't able to sleep. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, so I turn on Anime Plus or ATX or whatever the channel that they watch shows on. I think this one's Anime Plus. You see those little blocks folding in, dude? That's the fucking Anime Plus thing. But you're just watching the show on TV. You just like turn it on. And I think if I was living in Japan as an otaku right now, and I turned on the TV, and I just saw an anime happening, I would watch it. Simply because it was on television. Simply because there was anime versus the thing that was not anime that was on television earlier. Like, even if a really terrible show came on, I would watch it. I was thinking of this when I was watching Chrono Crusade, but I've also thought about it before. Like, how interesting would it be? Like, if one day, like if I was I turned this on television and I was just watching the show without context. Like, I turned it on, episode 14 was happening, I would get invested into it. Like, if I go downstairs right now and turn on Adult Swim, and I think right now the anime block is on or it's starting or whatever. This is like Friday night. I'm recording this. Probably it's past midnight now. Like, if I turn something on, even if it was fucking like Boku no Hero Academia, which I fucking despise, I would probably watch it for 20 minutes because it's on TV and it's anime. But if I went downstairs and it was just like regular generic ass TV, I wouldn't even turn it on. I wouldn't even bother looking for it. It's just how I care about these things, and that's what's going to lead me into the next topic, which is why anime and not anything else. I guess I've kind of explained that, but the next topic is going to be more specifically about why I can't stand like live action stuff, and why I've never been able to get into like television shows, like typical Netflix style things, or like shows like Breaking Bad or whatever popular show people are into these days or whatever. Um, I've never been able to get into them, and that's going to be the topic I'm going to talk about next time. But this was just extended notes regarding Digi fundamentally missing the point of otakuing in the episodes November 7th and November 15th of the Decompression Chamber, as well as general ideas about gatekeeping within anime, categorical attraction to this, autism, enjoying the 4 out of 10s and 7 out of 10s, because that's really what defines a medium. What's going to define it is that. And I guess that's like last little thingy, I guess. I'm never going to fucking end this video. It's endless. It's like if you go vacationing somewhere. Like if you go to a place, I don't know, let's say like you go to Tokyo, because I'm actually going to be going to Tokyo at the beginning of next year. But like, let's say I go to Tokyo. When I go to Tokyo, I don't want to go see the Sky Tree. I don't want to see fucking Shibuya Crossing, even though I might end up there. I don't want to be specifically on Akiba Strip. I want to be like in the like obscure parts of the town and the city and the country that you don't typically see represented anywhere. And the reason I want to do that, like I want to go on a train somewhere off into like wherever, away from the bustling touristy trap Tokyo. I want to go into the fucking the burbs out there, or like a city far away from Tokyo, since it's like a collection of cities. Just go somewhere out there and just like walk around the streets like one of my Japanese animes. Flip skirts of schoolgirls and walk into Lawson's, and like just see what it is. Just see Japan, dude. Unfiltered. Just go there and experience it like it's myself. Like if someone came to visit the United States, they don't know this room. They know what they only are allowed to see almost within the major hubs that are set up that way because of airports and planes and tourism and stuff, that people want to go see things. They want to cross things off a list. Cross things off a list, right? That's not what I want to do. I want to aimlessly spend 7 days dicking around Tokyo doing things that you can't see elsewhere. I want to eat shitty food. I want to go to a convenience store and get something weird as heck. I want to go to a random ass store in Akihabara and not buy the Clannad visual novel or the Fate visual novel or whatever. I want to buy some random ass shit, dude. The thing that you won't see. I want to go to Comiket and not visit the big circles. I'm not going to be at the Fatal Pulse Circle booth. Maybe I will gaze in, and maybe if they have a copy, I'll grab one. Same thing with like Orange Maru or something. One of the big circles I'm not going to be by. I'm going to be picking up the hastily made doujinshi that some group of friends made and printed barely days before the convention happened, and it's unfinished. The story is crap. Like the pages aren't like nothing is finished about the story. It's really like cobbled together, but it's a work of passion, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the obscure thing, that thing that is like a pure version of the things offered through the medium, and that's what I'm looking for. Anime. I'm not looking for Cowboy Bebop. I'm not looking for Evangelion. I don't even like Evangelion that much. I talked about it so highly in this video, but I don't honestly enjoy it that much, even though I have a fucking Asuka figure right there I've been looking at this entire time. I'm looking for the things that are just there. They exist as they are. I liked Gift Eternal Rainbow because it existed and represented nothing more than itself. It was just a shoujo game adaptation, unapologetically so. And it wasn't even that good. It just was a Bishoujo game adaptation, and it was exactly what was advertised on the box. And for that reason, it was beautiful. That's why I brought up tourism, right? I brought up tourism because a lot of people just go to see the important things. Anyone can do that and go to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower. That's why anyone can get into anime and watch Spirited Away. Anyone could get into music and listen to Dark Side of the Moon. Anyone could get into movies and watch, I don't know, like whatever. Anyone could get into Japanese cinema and watch Seven Samurai, right? Anyone could get into anything. And that's kind of the point. Anyone could watch a 10 out of 10 show. Anyone can appreciate a good thing as art, because I think at the very least humans are able to appreciate art or have some sort of feelings watching it that are maybe positive. But like, can you really enjoy a 4 out of 10 anime? Can you enjoy a 4 out of 10 movie? Like, even if you don't enjoy it that much, maybe there's something about it that you just can't stop looking at, and that's what I'm all about. I see these shows and I'm like, damn, I want to watch another one of these. I don't like it in the moment, but when I eventually look back on it, I look back on it fondly. Like all these shitty Little Sister anime I watched. I try to watch every single Little Sister anime. I'm even going to watch that bad one that came out a couple years back. But like among them, my sister is there, or something like Kono Naka ni Moto ga Iru, or whatever the show translated to. The Psyche, the lately my little sister has been weird. The one with the fucking Metal Gear reference in it. Like, I watch all these crappy Little Sister shows just because I was into Imoto characters. I'm watching all these Bishoujo game adaptations simply because I'm into just watching them all, because there's something I can't take my eyes off within these things. And I don't think Digi would like these shows. These are the shows Digi would drop. And that's really what makes me different from him, I think. At least when it comes to anime. And I think that's really what makes someone an otaku. Like, if you can enjoy these things. I'm not saying that you are only an otaku if you enjoy the bad things. You're an otaku if you can just enjoy them because they exist as a thing within the medium that you're into. I probably can continue appending different points and stuff for this and reiterating the same things again and again. But I need to drink some fucking water and get back to watching this anime. This rant went on like 40 minutes longer than I intended it to, but I think I said the majority of what I wanted to, and if not, I'm going to continue into another vlog. As I mentioned beforehand, it's going to be about why there is no such thing as a good live-action television show.